Hey y'all, I'm Carrie,
I'm Momo.
and this is Monstrous. This episode contains language and topics that may not be suitable for all listeners, and topics that may be triggering to some. Listener discretion is advised. All right, guys, welcome back for another week with us. Before we get into today's case, we had a 4-part series on Megan Trussell. I had a member of the family contact me, and there was a few things in our coverage that was not accurate. And some things from sources I found were not correct at all. So, those 4 episodes have been taken down. You cannot find those in our feed. And we will be redoing Megan's case from start to finish. I'm going to do the exact same thing that I have done on another big case that I'm working on. We're going to talk with the family, send everything over, make sure everything we have is correct, and then we'll re-record it and put it out for you in one large episode. So, look for
Get the
that.
popcorn ready.
Right. So, look for that because it will be coming. It'll be a little while since we are gonna be working with the family directly on this one, and these, of course, are obviously hard for the family to relive and all of that. So,
But we'd rather get our facts straight than put out false information.
exactly. If something's wrong, I wanna fix it. And if I have to take an episode down and completely redo it, then that's what we'll do. So, you're not losing your mind. You are 4 episodes short. And that is why. There's nothing wrong with your device or your podcast player. I took them down intentionally. So, with all of that being said, are you ready to dive into today?
Let's get it on.
Mr. Services. Maple 453. Thanks, Telstra. Hello, what address do you need the police? This is Dr. Chris Webster calling from the Leongatha Hospital. And I have a concern regarding a patient that presented here earlier but has left the building and is potentially exposed to a fatal toxin from mushroom poisoning. And I've tried several times to get hold of her on her mobile phone. So before I get all that information in, what address do you need the police to attend, Dr. Chris? Should I get the hospital address or the address of the patient? If you know where they are, their address. I have the address of the patient. Yeah, go ahead with that. Okay. It's at Leongatha. Leongatha 39 Pastor. So, nearest intersection. Is that correct? I'd have to get Google Maps it up, but yes, I would say that sounds right. That sounds like it's very Leongatha. Yeah. What's her name? So the last name is Patterson, Patterson. First name? Erin, Erin. Did you have a date of birth? 30th of September, 1974. When did you present at hospital? At 8:05 today. Yeah. Mushroom poisoning, you said. Yeah, so there were 5 people that ate a meal on Saturday, and 2 of them are in intensive care at Dandenong Hospital. 2 have just been transferred from Leongatha Hospital to Dandenong Hospital, and Erin presented this morning with symptoms of poisoning. And what happened when she presented? She's got it left. No, it was time for the nurse to begin observations, and I was managing the other critically unwell patient, so I had a brief chat to her about where the mushrooms were obtained. And after that, while I was attending the other patients, the nurse informed me that she had discharged herself against medical advice. So I don't know exactly. Oh, we've got a form here. Hang on, let's tell me what time she left. No, it doesn't have a time. No, she left at. So she left at 10 past. She was only here for 5 minutes.
Dang. Somebody's in for a hell of a bellyache.
Right. Well, with these mushrooms, it's much more than a bellyache.
I was being nice. I don't think all the belly medicine in the world is gonna help that.
Definitely not. Okay, so before we dive in, I want to take a minute to acknowledge the weight of this story. It's a case that feels like a classic noir thriller. But for the people of South Gippsland, it was a waking nightmare that shattered their sense of security. This is a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous things aren't hiding in the shadows, but instead, they're sitting right across from you at the dinner table. Uh, Leongatha. To anyone who drives through it, it's a postcard of Australian pastoral life. Rolling green hills, dairy farms, and a community where everyone knows your name. It's the kind of place where front doors stay unlocked and news travels at the speed of a trip to the post office. But on July 29th, 2023, this quiet town became the backdrop for a mystery that would capture the world's attention.
Didn't get mine 'cause this is the first I've heard of it.
It started with an invitation. Erin Patterson, a mother and former air traffic controller, reached out to her estranged in laws, Dawn and Gail Patterson. She also invited the local Baptist pastor, Ian Wilkinson, and his wife, Heather. The goal, the sorry, the stated goal was a reconciliation lunch, a chance to mend broken family rifts over a home cooked meal. But the lies had only begun there. To get them to that table, Aaron had allegedly spun a web of tragedy, telling the family that she was battling terminal cancer. In a small town like Leongatha, news like that is a call to action. She played on their mercy, turning an olive branch into a summons. Now, just 24 hours before the lunch, she sent a text to Gail, later dubbed the test of patience text. In it, Erin claimed she was waiting on results from a needle biopsy for a lump. We now know that there was no biopsy and no lump. This wasn't just a lunch. It was a trap. No, it was a trap baited with fake grief. Now, the centerpiece of that lunch was a beef Wellington. It is a dish that really demands respect. It's a thick beef tenderloin mushroom
So,
coated in a rich mushroom duxelle, wrapped in prosciutto and encased in a golden flaky pastry crust. To make beef Wellington, it is a labor of love. And we're going to talk further about this dish of choice for a second. In the culinary world, a beef Wellington is known as one of the hardest dishes to master. But in the world of forensics, it's something else entirely. A duxelle is a finely chopped paste of mushrooms. Now, during the eventual trial, it was revealed that Aaron had used a recipe from the popular cookbook Recipe 10 Eats Dinner, but she modified it. So, spoiler alert here. Aaron, for those who have not figured it out yet, is the bad guy. So, instead of making one traditional large log like one normally does when making beef Wellington, she prepared individual Wellingtons. She told the jury that she did this because the local supermarket was out of the large eye fillets. But the prosecution argued that this wasn't just a logistical choice. It was a way to ensure that only the guest portions, only the intended guest portions were laced with the lethal toxin, while her own and those of her children were remained safe. And then there's one question. What about Simon, her estranged husband? For this lunch, he was the guest of honor, the man the reconciliation was supposed to be for. But Simon didn't show up to this lunch.
My bishop, he's a smart man.
In the 2025 trial, it emerged that after his harrowing ICU stay in 2022, he had developed a very wary and almost instinctual hesitation toward any meals that his estranged wife prepared. So instead, he stayed home that day. A choice that stands as the very thin line between a triple homicide and a quadruple one. What?
Just being an ex-wife, it's just they're all lucky they're still living.
You're so full of it.
I know.
So Simon's absence created a literal void in the room, an empty chair that turned the reconciliation lunch into a theater of the absurd. Now imagine the psychological tension of sitting at a table to mend a relationship with a man who isn't even present. But as the four adults sat down to eat, a silent, molecular level, yeah, that's right. The fuck? I thought I put it, never mind. Clock began to tick. Within hours, the warmth of the dining room would be replaced by the sterile, panicked halls of an emergency ward. What the guests didn't know was that the earthy, savory flavor of that Wellington didn't come from the supermarket. And it wasn't just any mushroom. Hidden within the filling was the most lethal fungus on the planet.
It's gonna make me think twice about eating mushrooms, you know that, don't you? As much as I love them.
Amanita phalloides, otherwise known as the death cap mushroom. When these mushrooms are dried, as Erin claimed that they were, they emit a very specific, cloyingly sweet honey like odor. It's a scent that is described as sickly sweet, a stark sensory contrast to the savory umami of the traditional Wellington. It's a scent that should have been a warning, a biological red flag hanging in the air of that Patterson kitchen. So, to understand the horror of this case, you have to understand the mushroom itself. The death cap mushroom isn't native to Australia. It hitched a ride there on the roots of imported oak and chestnut trees. And there's a dark poetic irony in that. These trees, the English oak and the chestnut, were brought over by early settlers to make the rugged Australian landscape look more like home. They were symbols of comfort, landmarks of a manicured English garden. But beneath the surface, those roots were harboring a silent, invasive killer. In the suburbs of Victoria, the very trees planted to provide shade and a sense of belonging were feeding the most lethal fungi on the planet. It looks innocent, almost like a common field mushroom, but it contains a chemical cocktail that evolution has spent millions of years perfecting. So, the reason the death cap mushroom is responsible for 90% of mushroom related fatalities worldwide lies in its primary toxin, alpha amanitin. This molecule is a biological hijacker. Once it's ingested, it targets an enzyme called RNA polymerase II, which is essentially the engine that reads the cell's DNA to create messenger RNA. So basically, by inhabiting this enzyme, alpha-amanitin stops the cell's instruction manual from being able to be read. So imagine a factory, okay, where the power is completely cut out and the blueprints are simultaneously shredded. The factory, which would be the cell, can't produce the protein that it needs to survive because the blueprints to do that are missing.
That's crazy.
Cellular metabolism simply grinds to a complete halt, leading to mass cellular death or necrosis. Then you have the liver. Acting as the body's primary filter, it absorbs the highest concentration of the poison, leading to fulminant hepatic failure. But there's a secondary biological trap, and this one's called enterohepatic circulation. After the liver processes the toxin, it's then sent to the gallbladder in the form of bile. Then, when you eat your next meal, that bile and also the toxin is released back into your intestine, where it is reabsorbed and sent back to the liver for a second, third, and even fourth round of destruction. It's a closed loop system of internal poisoning.
Damn.
So, what makes this toxin particularly terrifying is its resilience. Amatoxins are heat stable. They aren't neutralized by boiling, frying, or even baking at high temperatures, which is required for a beef Wellington. In fact, the pastry crust of a Wellington acts like a pressure cooker, trapping the moisture and the toxins inside a sealed environment.
So the whole thing's poisoned from it.
hmm
Damn.
And the dosage required is minuscule. Only zero point 0.1 milligrams per kilogram of body weight is enough to be fatal.
Just a tiny bite'll screw you up.
Yep.
Damn.
So a single death cap mushroom contains enough poison to kill multiple healthy adults. To a calculated mind, the death cap isn't just a toxin, it's a defense strategy. It allows the killer to play the role of the bumbling hobbyist or the unfortunate cook. It's a weapon that, by its very nature, suggests an accident rather than an ambush. Unlike a ballistic trail or a stab wound, a mushroom provides a cloak of natural causes that a killer can hide behind for weeks, while the evidence quite literally digests. The clinical progression of this poisoning is a slow motion tragedy divided into three distinct stages,
It makes my stomach hurt just thinking about it.
right? Like you said, you're going to think twice about eating mushrooms.
No kidding.
So, first comes the gastrointestinal phase, which is usually between 6 to 24 hours after ingestion. It's characterized by violent vomiting and pain. This is often misdiagnosed as a standard stomach flu, and that's exactly what happened here. The victims here were initially sent home from the local hospital and told to rest and hydrate. Then comes the most deceptive part, stage two, known as the false recovery or the honeymoon phase. For a day or two, the symptoms subside. The patient feels better and their appetite returns, and they may even believe that they're over the worst of it. Now, at Austin Hospital in Melbourne, the atmosphere was one of desperate guarded hope. Doctors, in this case, had even administered the celebinin protocol. This is a specialized treatment derived from the milk thistle plant, and it works by binding to the liver cell membranes, essentially acting as a physical shield to prevent that alpha-amanitin from entering the system. But for Gail, Dawn, and Heather, the toxin had already breached those gates. The honeymoon phase here wasn't a recovery. It was just the silence before the storm. And that's how it is in every case, but unfortunately, they didn't get there fast enough in this case. So while the town prayed for a miracle, the toxin was silently completing its circuit through their systems. It's a haunting thought. The victims most likely spent their final conscious hours thinking that they were going to go home, unaware that their biology had already been signed away. Then you have the third stage, hepatorenal phase. The organs fail, jaundice sets in, and the body collapses. This is the moment that the stomach flu narrative officially falls apart. So the four guests arrive at the local hospital in Korumbura. I think that's how you say it. In the 2025 trial, the court heard the audio of the 000 medical transfer call made by the attending doctor to the Adult Retrieval Victoria Service, which 000 is Australia's version of our 911.
Okay.
Yep. And call that call is the voice clip that you heard at the beginning of the episode. Mhm. So, as you heard, the transcript reveals a chilling shift in the tone. But there's more to that call than what I played for you. In that call later on, the doctor notes that the patient's liver enzymes are off the charts. It's in this call that the word Amanita is first mentioned. The triage was a nightmare, involving the coordinations of four simultaneous life critical transfers to Melbourne. But through the panic, one detail stood out. Erin Patterson was the only one at the table who did not require a life saving transfer, despite her claims of also being ill. So while four of the people at that table were soon fighting for breath and being airlifted to Melbourne for emergency liver transplants, the host, Erin, remained clinically stable. This is the first of many discrepancies. In the media storm that followed, Erin gave an interview on her front porch. And those of you that know this case may remember this footage. Erin was wearing a patterned dress, her voice cracking as she told reporters that she was devastated. But true crime analysts and the public alike noticed something unsettling. Erin appeared to be dry crying. There were no visible tears, and her body language seemed more defensive than it was distraught. Even as the victims lay dying, Erin was reportedly busy crafting the narrative. In her initial cook statement to the police, she claimed she had also become ill and had been hospitalized. She told investigators that she was given a liver protecting saline drip. But here's the kicker: when investigators subpoenaed the hospital records, they found nothing. No admission, no drip, and no treatment for poisoning. She had fabricated a medical history in real time to match the symptoms of her dying friends and in laws. And to back up her claim of illness, she pointed to an emergency bathroom visit at a service station while taking her son to a flying lesson the day after lunch. But during the trial, CCTV footage revealed the 9-second toilet stop. She was in and out of the bathroom in under 10 seconds, which is hardly the behavior of someone suffering from the violent gastrointestinal distress of this mushroom poisoning. While she sought for the cameras on her porch, her written statement to the police told a completely different story. It was a cold 22-page document that read more like a technical manual for a Beef Wellington than the accounts of a grieving woman. It was the handwriting of a woman who was more concerned on the temperature of her oven than the heartbeat of her family. When police analyzed that formal cook statement, they found what they called a wall of mundane detail. She was incredibly precise about the trivial things like the brand of oil she used, how she sliced the beef, the temperature of the oven, but when the narrative reached the mushrooms, her memory became curiously hazy. It is a classic red flag, where a suspect overwhelming over explains the normal parts of their day to create the veneer of innocence while glossing over the lethal variables. Detectives also used a technique called statement analysis on her early media interviews. They noticed that when Erin spoke about the mushrooms, she used distancing language. She didn't say, I picked mushrooms. She said, mushrooms were used. She avoided the first person pronoun when discussing the lethal component of the meal. Now, in the world of forensic linguistics, this is often a major red flag. It's a subconscious attempt to separate oneself from the act of violence. This is often accompanied by linguistic redaction, where when suspects are guilty, they often skip over the action part of the story in their own minds. And while during her statements, Erin focused heavily on the cleaning up after the meal, the bleaching of the surfaces, and the disposal of items rather than the preparation of it. It's a classic tale where the brain wants to clean up the crime rather than reveal what the crime was. Now, as the investigation intensified, the focus shifted on on the ghost grocer. Erin claimed that she had bought the mushrooms already dried from a shop in Mount Waverly. This led Jesus Christ. This lead took police on a massive trek through Victoria's retail history. They reviewed over 300 hours of CCTV. They checked every delivery log. They even checked the use by dates of every mushroom pack in the region. There was no record of Erin in those shops, and no shop in the area sold the specific dried variety that she had described. This wasn't a minor detail. It was the moment that the accident defense officially began to crumble. When the investigation moved to investigate a tip in Kunwara, they found a major break. This search was a monumental needle in the haystack operation, and that's to put it mildly. The Kunwara tip lead led, the, led them to a very odd location, and that was a lonely, windswept regional landfill.
Mm.
And according to the tip, Erin had discarded a food dehydrator shortly after the dinner. Now, this was an odd yet very specific tip, but they ran it, checking it out to make sure they found the truth. But finding a small, single kitchen appliance among tons of waste was a triumph of investigative persistence. In her initial interviews, Erin was questioned about this, and she claimed that she didn't know where her dehydrator was. How do you lose a food dehydrator? Like, those things aren't little.
Don't we know it?
You don't just misplace it. Like, what? Now, when confronted with CCTV footage that showed her car at the exact dump where they would eventually find the dehydrator, her story shifted. She admitted to dumping the dehydrator in a panic.
How do you purposely put it in a landfill in a panic?
Yep, she's
Putting it in a
saying,
panic would be taking it to, like, a restaurant dumpster or something.
right, I'm just going to throw it in my trash can and just get rid of it.
Ugh.
Yep. But still, the questions remain. If you have nothing to hide, then why are you throwing away the evidence of your cooking? Forensic analysis of that device would later show undeniable traces of the fatal mushrooms. Digital forensics further dismantled her narrative. Investigators discovered that Erin had been an active user of the iNaturalist app. And this is an app that helps people identify plants, animals, and fungi by simply taking a photo, video, or audio of it. In the months leading up to the lunch, her history of this app showed her tracking death cap sightings in the nearby town of Locke. From here, detectives began a process of mycological mapping. So you see, the death cap lives in a symbiotic relationship with the roots of those very specific trees that I mentioned. So English oak and the chestnut, but English oak being its favorite partner. In Victoria, these trees were planted as landmarks or in neater European style groves. For someone who knew the land, these trees were essentially a map to a hidden armory. Detectives walked through specific groves and loch looking for these host trees, finding the specific fairy rings where mushrooms grow, matching her GPS pings exactly. Then, even more damning was the discovery of her digital devices. Investigators found a photo, not just of mushrooms, but of mushrooms on a scale. It was a high resolution image of death caps sitting on a digital kitchen scale. So, this wasn't a casual foraging photo, it was literal documentation of a dosage.
So she waited out just to make sure she had just enough.
Yep, to make sure that it would kill them rather than just make them sick.
Crazy bitch.
Yep,
I mean, I wasn't crazy about some of my in-laws.
but, like,
I don't
really?
think I don't think I number 1, I can't afford to make Beef Wellington, and I sure in the heck ain't gonna go out traipsing through the woods looking for the damn things.
So, they had also discovered that Aaron's primary phone, which was referred to in court as phone A, was never discovered. The prosecution argued that she disposed of this at the same time as the dehydrator in order to wipe the most incriminating evidence away. Then you have her search history, which was equally chilling. So she wasn't just looking at mushrooms online. She was looking at undetectable poisons, as well as how to hide the taste of mushrooms and symptoms of liver failure months prior to the lunch. Investigators found her interest in liver failure wasn't just a passing curiosity, but that it had spiked in the weeks following Simon's release from the hospital in 2022. It was as if she was studying the ones that got away to ensure that next time there would be no survivors. Yeah. Investigators also uncovered a SIM card shell game. So Aaron was allegedly swapping the SIM cards between a Samsung tablet and a Nokia phone to avoid GPS and communication tracking. It was a sophisticated attempt to go dark, but it only served to highlight her consciousness of guilt. Now, this brings us to what the prosecution called the precision paradox. Erin Patterson wasn't just a home cook, she was a former air traffic controller. This is a profession that demands an almost superhuman level of attention to detail.
Well,
It is
yeah, otherwise the planes crash.
right. It is a theater of high stakes concentration where every coordinate and every altitude matters. ATC professionals are trained to manage multiple moving variables under extreme pressure, where one lapse means hundreds of lives. There is a zero margin for error in that profession.
Exactly.
So the jury had to ask, how does a person trained to that level of precision accidentally pick, dry, and serve a lethal fungus without noticing the color, the scent, or the location of where they picked it? To the prosecution, it wasn't a mistake. It was a total system failure that coordinated her entire professional nope, that contradicted her entire professional identity. Now, before we move on to the trial, we're going to talk about the survivor's silence. For 50 long days, Ian Wilkinson lay in a hospital bed in Austin, his life hanging by a thread. While the world outside was erupting into immediate chaos and Erin was being questioned, Ian was in a medically induced state of total stillness. The community of Korumbura held silent vigils, they lit candles in the dark, and they prayed for the one man who could potentially testify to what happened at that table. His recovery was described as a miracle, though it was slow, and it was a painful crawl back from the edge of total organ failure. He had to wake up to a world where his wife, Heather, and his best friend were gone. That silence, that long wait for him to be strong enough to speak, was the heartbeat of this entire investigation. It was the survivor's guilt met with a profound sense of duty. He knew he was the only one left to tell the truth. The trial in 2025 brought him, the sole survivor, Ian Wilkinson, to the stand. His testimony was a quiet, devastating moment in Australian legal history. He spoke of a two-plate discrepancy, observing that Erin had served herself from a separate tan-colored plate while the guests received the darker-hued servings from the Wellington. So she had one color plate, they had ate from a different color plate.
Serving platters.
Yeah. So that way she knew which beef Wellington was poisoned and which one wasn't. Yeah. He also recalled her pantry reluctance as odd and a sharp possessiveness over the kitchen, and she had prevented anyone from assisting with the meal prep. In a small town like Leongatha, where guests almost instinctively help with the serving and the dishes, her gatekeeping of the kitchen was a massive social red flag in hindsight. Erin wasn't just the host. She was the only one allowed to see the blueprints of that meal. But the most damning piece of evidence, however, involved the survivors who weren't even at the table. It was revealed that Erin's children had eaten leftovers the following day. When asked why they hadn't fallen ill, the court heard a detail that chilled the room. Erin said the mushrooms had been intentionally scraped off their plates before they had been eaten. This revelation led to an intense debate among experts regarding the leaching effect. Now, alpha because alpha-amanitin is water soluble, it leaches into the meat during the cooking process. So, simply scraping the mushrooms off wouldn't have been enough to make the meat safe. This this led to a grim scientific conclusion that had been presented by the prosecution. Erin had most likely made two entire different Wellingtons, which is I said that earlier.
It should be crazy.
Mhm. If the kids had ate the same meat, like she says they did, and they didn't become ill, that didn't happen because the mushrooms were scraped off. It was because they were fed the Wellington that Erin ate, the one with no toxin at
That
all.
was fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, because she wouldn't wanna poison her children.
Right, and she wasn't trying to poison herself. Yep. This level of calculation pointed back to a trial run in 2022 when Erin's estranged husband Simon suffered a mysterious near fatal illness that left him in the ICU for 21 days.
Bless his heart.
And when I say harrowing, I mean it. Simon underwent 4 major abdominal surgeries and spent 16 days in an induced coma.
Poor guy.
At that time, doctors were baffled by the failure of his small intestine.
Well, yeah, because it's about small intestine was being bombarded.
Mhm. But in the 2025 trial, the prosecution called this phase 1 calibration. He had been invited to the 2023 lunch, but had pulled out at the last minute. And this
Smart
was a
man.
right, this was a decision that probably saved his life because this time Aaron wasn't going to let anyone leave alive. Now, one of the most shocking pieces of pretrial evidence involved was a search history for barium carbonate, which is a chemical found in some rat poisons. And when we talk about barium carbonate, we aren't just talking about a chemical. We're talking about a history of trial and error. Barium carbonate causes profound muscle weakness and gastrointestinal failure, mirroring, mirroring the mysterious illness that Simon had suffered in 2022.
So he was a test dummy, so to speak.
Yeah, from what I have gathered, it sounds like she had attempted to kill Simon in 2022, but it had failed. And it sounds like she tried to kill him with some kind of rat poison just because of the chemical. So then she decided in 2023 she was going to make sure he died,
But he didn't show.
but he didn't show. Yep. That's speculation, of course, but that's what it sounds like to me.
That sounds like to me shit.
The prosecutors argued that Erin was essentially using her family's dinner table as a laboratory. If
Like
the
bunch of guinea pigs.
So she had tried to poison her husband in 2021. I couldn't find the exact details of that one. Some kind of chemical poisoning, and it didn't work. So then she moved to the gastric mystery poisoning of 2022. And by the time 2023 rolled around, she wasn't guessing anymore. She had graduated from industrial chemicals to the most lethal tool in nature's shed. Now, to mask her behavior after the death, Patterson leaned back into her cancer ruse, using her fabricated diagnosis to explain her erratic behavior to those around her. But the court saw right through that performance. Beyond the vendetta, the court also looked at the financial motive. Evidence surfaced regarding a significant estate and life insurance policy. Prosecutors argued that Erin felt financially trapped following her separation from Simon and saw the removal of his parents, who held significant assets, as a way to secure her future. Because if her in laws died and her husband died,
Her children would the children would get everything.
and she would have control over it.
Yep.
Hmm. So they painted a picture of a woman using her high stakes training to solve a financial problem with cold, mathematical finality. The case triggered what historians now call the Australian mushroom panic. For months after the news broke, supermarket mushroom sales plummeted across the country. The Victorian government was forced to issue unprecedented health warnings, and foraging for wild fungi went from a rustic hobby to a social taboo. And the trauma wasn't just in the courtroom either, it was in the heart of the Korumbora community. We have to remember who these people were. Gail and Dawn were the bedrock of Leongatha. Gail was a dedicated member of the local choir, known for her kindness, while the Wilkinsons themselves had given decades of service to their church. Their legacy wasn't just in their family, but also in the dozens of lives that they had touched in South Gippsland. The empty pews of the Pattersons and the Wilkinsons became a daily reminder of the loss. For months, Erin was a ghost in her own town. While the police were building their case against her, the court of public opinion had already reached a verdict. People stopped visiting. The invitations she once sent out were met with silence. In a small town like this, you don't need a jail cell to be an outcast. Sometimes, the most effective prison is the one your neighbors build around you with their averted eyes. Now, on November 2nd, 2023, the public finally got an answer for what they were waiting for. On that day, Erin was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder, 1 attempted murder, and 4 charges related to the attempts taken on Simon Patterson's life. Now, after a long legal journey, the case reached its peak. On April 29th of 2025, a major legal shift occurred. The prosecution decided to drop the four separate charges related to the attempts on Simon Patterson's life in order to focus the trial specifically on the lunch event. Then finally, on July 7th of 2025, once both sides had rested and the jury went back to deliberate, they came out and announced they had returned with a verdict, and it echoed through the hills of Gippsland. Guilty. Erin Patterson was found guilty on 3 counts of murder for the deaths of Gail and Dawn Patterson and Heather Wilkinson, and 1 count of attempted murder for the poisoning of Ian Wilkinson. Then 2 months later, on September 8th, 2025, Justice Christopher Beale stood before a packed courtroom. But before he handed down her sentence, the court heard the victim impact statements. The moments where the clinical facts of the case were replaced by the raw, jagged edges of human loss. Ian Wilkinson, the sole survivor who had to learn how to live again without the woman who had been his partner in faith and life for decades, delivered a statement that left the gallery in absolute silence. He spoke of the deafening quiet of his home and the crushing weight of knowing that his final meal with Heather was a choreographed execution. Gail and Dawn's children spoke of a family tree that had been stripped of its roots, how their own children would now grow up without the wisdom and warmth of the grandparents who were supposed to be there for every milestone. They described a legacy of kindness that had been met with a legacy of cold, calculated cruelty. My mouth is
Yeah, this is
getting
really
dry.
a sad one.
I know.
All because she wanted money.
Yeah, pretty much.
She'd have been better off blackmailing him or something.
Right. Just divorce him. You're gonna get half of everything.
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know what their divorce laws are over there.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I'm not sure. So for them, no sentence.
She'd at least get child support.
Yeah. For them, no sentence could ever fill the hollow space left at their family table. Following those devastating words, Justice Christopher Beale handed down 3 life sentences for the murders and 25 years for the attempted murder, all to be served concurrently. Under the laws of Victoria, this means Erin Patterson will not be eligible for parole until the year 2056. By that time, she will be 82 years old. Erin is currently serving her sentence at the Dam Phyllis Forest Center, a maximum security women's prison in Melbourne, where she is held in near solitary confinement for her own protection due to her notorious status. Then, as of November of 2025, the case officially entered the appeals phase. Her legal team has lodged an appeal against her conviction, citing unfair and oppressive questioning during the trial and potential jury irregularities. Rumors have sur- have Rumors have also surfaced that during the 2025 deliberations, several jurors were allegedly seen at a local pub in Leongatha interacting with members of the lead investigative team. Eh, one of those things. It's kind of hard to say,
Like catch-22.
right? Because in a town this small, it's almost impossible not to cross paths.
Right.
But her lawyers are arguing that this exposure to outside influence was enough to compromise the entire verdict. Then at the same time, the prosecution has filed a cross appeal against the sentence, arguing that the 33-year non parole period is manifestly inadequate, and they are seeking a life sentence without the possibility of parole.
And she shouldn't get parole. She's a danger to everybody.
No, but at the same time, she has to spend 33 years before she's eligible for parole.
And that doesn't mean she's gonna get it.
Yeah, and there's no way to say she's gonna get it, but she'll be in her mid-80s by then.
Yeah, but the sad part about this, the children have to grow up without their mother,
Yeah,
That's the sad part about it. And no grandparents.
right.
So the kids are actually suffering
In
suffering
any of
twice.
these cases, that's who suffers the most, in
Exactly.
cases like this specifically.
The children.
Thankfully, their dad didn't go, and they still have him, thankfully.
Yes.
Okay, so furthermore, forensic mycologists have recently discovered excuse me, have recently published a paper earlier just this year regarding the mushroom DNA that had been found in the dehydrator. By using advanced genomic sequencing, which is a field that is now being called forensic mycology, they were able to match the spores that had been found on the dehydrator to a specific colony of the death cap mushrooms which is located in the exact forest patch where Erin's phone's GPS placed her in just the days before lunch. I said that totally weird, sorry. It's no so this isn't just a type of mushroom. They now have a genetic fingerprint. This
That's
DNA
just freak.
So this mushroom DNA profile matches the mother colony under that specific English oak in law. So can't nobody say, "Oh, what just so happens to be those same ones." No, this could be the final nail in the coffin for Erin, because this proves her GPS took her to this specific spot, and these mushrooms here match the mushrooms down to a DNA molecular level of the mushrooms that were found in the dehydrator. She can't say she didn't do it now.
Well, she can, but it ain't gonna mean nothing.
Right. So when Justice Christopher Beale delivered those final remarks in late 2025, he didn't just focus on the chemistry of the mushrooms or of the digital trail of wiped phones. He focused on the betrayal of the most basic human contract, the sharing of a meal. The judge remarked that Erin Patterson had turned a symbol of nourishment and reconciliation into a calculated delivery system for death. He spoke of the quote, cruelty of the false recovery, how she watched her family feel better for a few hours, knowing full well that the damage had already been done. He described the survivor's trauma, specifically for Ian Wilkinson, who had to wake up in a world where his wife and his best friends were gone, all because of a lunch that he thought was an olive branch. In sentencing her to life, the court sent a clear message that no matter how perfect the crime is designed to be, the truth always has a way of surfacing to the smallest details.
Yep,
And that's the mushroom murders.
that's crazy.
It's not what you expected, is
No,
it?
it is not.
I thought it was a good one. I think there's I wanna say they have a Netflix documentary on
That wouldn't surprise me.
I think they do. Is it on
Wouldn't
Netflix?
surprise me at all.
Mm, let me see. Yes, it is on Netflix. It's called Death Cap: The Mushroom Murders. And it was released December 19th of, 2025. So just a few months ago.
Well, this all just went down less than a year ago.
Yeah, but yep, December 19th, Netflix released a documentary on it.
That's
Wild.
crazy.
Yep. Okay, so that's where we're gonna leave it for today. Now,
Don't eat mushrooms, y'all.
just
As
know where
much as
you
I
get them
love them.
from. Just know where you get them from. Don't eat wild mushrooms.
Well, your husband's itching to go mushrooming.
Yeah, but those don't look anything like death cap mushrooms. So, I'll show you a picture,
Okay, that helps.
which there'll have to be pictures on Facebook and all that, like there always is. These look almost like the mushrooms that grow in our yard. Like, they're
According
not these.
according to Dax, they are poisonous.
Well, they are, but they're not death cap mushrooms. They'll just make you sick to your stomach.
No, thank you.
Oh,
I have enough tummy.
there you go. I gotta plug this in.
They do look like the ones that grow wild in the yard.
Right? But they're a different color. But the
Yeah.
shape of them, they look just like that. The ones that grow in the yard are just all white. Okay. Sorry, I had to plug my soundboard in. But yeah.
Go ahead.
So the morel mushrooms that we picked
They're a different
look
shape. They're
totally
more
different.
cylinder.
They got
They're
the
more
little
of a
tiny holes in them and stuff,
yeah.
yeah.
They're more of a cylinder.
Okay, so guys, we've spent the last few weeks looking at the science of toxins and the precision of human killers.
People
We
be crazy. I'm telling you, and everybody wonders why I'm a hermit.
we've had some not so fun cases over the since the beginning of the year, really.
We've had a lot of heart wrench, heart wrenching.
I'm totally leaving that in. So, we're gonna deviate for a couple weeks, and we're gonna go in a different direction for a little while.
That's scary.
Give you a little bit of a break. We're gonna look at what happens when the monster doesn't leave a DNA trail next week. We're gonna lean into the unexplained. We are headed to one of the most haunted houses in Middle America to investigate a case where the evidence is etched into human skin in the forms of scratches and burns. Now, If you think people are the only things capable of malice, wait until you hear what's waiting for us in Kansas.
Hey, that ain't too far away.
Mhm. So come back next week for a little bit of a spooky episode.
She's doing the finger thing, guys.
Yep. And then after that, we're gonna go visit the ocean.
No, thanks.
Yeah, I love the ocean.
Nah, I didn't even like going to the lake
Ugh,
when we went 2 years ago.
ugh. I
I mean, I
love
had
the
don't get me wrong,
water.
I had fun.
I love the water.
You always have.
I love the ocean. Just the smell of it.
Too much salt.
I love the smell of the ocean.
I can see the boys.
They like the ocean too.
I can picture the boys.
Mhm. And then the sound, the waves
Now
crashing it.
that
Love it.
I can sit and relax and just listen to that. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I can close my eyes and just be totally relaxed listening to the waves in the ocean.
The ocean is like
It lets to me go, "You fat heifer, you ain't getting in the water. I'll drown you."
well, in a couple weeks, you might never go to the ocean.
Look, I sat through Jaws. Come on now.
That's just a movie.
Exa Yeah, but when it came out, it scared and we were living in Southern California, it scared the snot out of us. We didn't go to the beach for a while.
I love that movie. I need to get the boys to watch that movie. Such a good movie. I love it.
Now, I think Dexy would like it.
I love Jaws. Dun dun dun
Dun,
dun
dun.
dun dun. Yep, I love that movie.
Little weird.
You're one to talk.
Ain't as weird as you.
I think everyone that comes here is weird in some way.
In this family? Yep,
Okay, guys, sorry.
exactly.
So we appreciate you guys for tuning in, sticking with us through another episode. It means a lot to us.
It
Uh,
does.
if you like the show and you look forward to it every week, give us a rate, a review. Make sure you subscribe, hit your little bell notification so that way you know when we drop something new. We've had a bonus and an update come out this month. So who knows when we may drop another one of those. Leave us a comment if you want. I read all the comments and all the reviews. Those reviews also help those listeners find us. So give us a review. I lost where I was trying to say. If you want to see what we're up to between episodes, see the photos or anything else related to these cases, I've shared some updates on the Megan Trussell Act, the Megan Alert. I've shared that on Facebook. I've also shared a few things regarding Amy Bradley as well on Facebook. So those socials can be found. The links for those socials can be found on our episode description. So go check those out. That is also where you will find our link for our Buy Me a Coffee page if you would like to send anything to that. If you have any case suggestions or a personal tale you'd like to share with us and we can share it on the show, you can send that directly to our Facebook through a private message. You can also email those. That is also in the episode description. And that is all we have. So until next week, make sure you stay safe out there. We hope you keep listening. And as always, remember to
Watch out for monsters.
and don't kill people. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.